Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Overcoming the Obstacles today. Our topic is to discuss famous people who overcame adversity. So, we're talking about people who just overcame the odds. And the reason we're talking about that today is because right now, I think we can all use just a little bit of encouragement. If you look at any headline, you already know the world is going crazy. So, at Overcoming the Obstacles, what we want to do is give you some encouragement and empowerment. Hey, Busy Lady 35 is here. Hi, Busy Lady. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. So, we're just going to talk about some famous people who overcame. Now, normally, I am in my kitchen, but I couldn't get my laptop to work because I forgot to charge it. I hooked up the cord, and some of y'all may be able to relate. I hooked up the cord to the laptop, and I hooked it up into the extension cord to let it charge all night so it could be charging because I don't have a really good outlet I can reach in the kitchen. So I have to do that one on battery until I can remember to get a longer extension cord. So anyway, guess what I did not plug it into? The outlet. So here I am coming to you from the studio. Oh, good. Busy Lady says that she's doing well and she got off early. And she says, how are you? And I'm doing okay this morning. Or this afternoon. Whatever it is, I'm doing okay. I got good news. I have been working on the service dog application. I heard by email that I was approved. And then today, just a little while ago, I got the official letter. So I'm all excited about that. So, and I'm sitting here. If you've seen other episodes, you know, I start off by pouring my hot tea and so forth. But since I'm in here, I can't do that. So that's all right. I still have cookies. I just got some store-bought Dare cookies, Dare. These are maple. I fell in love with these in Canada. And yes, my china plate and my glass of iced tea. Now, this is a stem glass, and this is china, and it's not to be highfalutin, okay? My point is that we all deserve nice things, and we all deserve to have good things to happen to us. And I think that looking at these famous people who have overcome the odds, overcome challenges, there's some lessons for us in our lives, you know? And that encouragement, hopefully, of seeing what they overcame and how they got from point A to point Z, if you will, although their lives are not over for the most of them. Just seeing how they did that can really encourage us. And on the stemware and on the china plate, if you don't have china or stemware, that's fine. Maybe you're used to eating out of paper because your life is just that stressed, and you get your nice regular kitchen plate out of the cabinet. Or if you do decide to go, oh, okay. Busy Lady says that's a pretty glass. I was just fixing to say, if you do decide that you want a pretty glass, this one is a Dollar Tree find, okay? Dollar Tree. It's really nice. It's got the cut pattern in the side of it, and it's really heavy. So you don't have to spend a lot of money just to take a minute and pamper yourself. And I like pampering. I'll be the first to admit it. I hope you all like pampering. Just once in a while to do just something nice just for ourselves, right? What do you think, Busy? Do you like pampering? I like pampering. So, okay. I do want to ask you, if you've not subscribed yet and you are catching this on replay, to please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and do share it so we can get word out about the channel. Yeah, good old Dollar Tree strikes again. And I saw the other day, this one anyway, they're getting ready for Christmas. So they had their China plates and their chargers, the glass they've had for a little while. And they've got some really cute things. So you don't have to spend a fortune. And I love their lotions and some of their soaps, like the Yardley lavender soap and the Yardley oatmeal soap. I love those. And at $1, I can sometimes go and get those and use those for pampering. And Busy says, yes, she could use some. I can relate. Another good reason to hit the Dollar Tree. Right? Okay, well, famous people who overcame. Yeah, do that. Hopefully it won't be as crowded for you as it was for me the other day, because it was like wall-to-wall people. I made the mistake of going at around the 15th of the month when a lot of people get paid. Oh my goodness. Busy says she needs a new sleep mask and she gets them there. They are great. I love those. Whenever I go to Alaska or on a big trip, I always go get a new one because they're great. Dollar Tree gets a bad rap sometime, but I like Dollar Tree. As Busy knows. So, well, I have to tell you that for this show today, I had the best time researching people to talk about. And it was very eye-opening to me because I didn't know that a lot of really famous people went through a lot of crap before getting where they are. A lot of it. Like, we've probably heard that Walt Disney got fired because he didn't have any creativity. Walt Disney. And I've heard this story 100 times, but yet it still boggles my mind that he, of all people, would get fired for not having creativity. And then he goes on, he creates this mouse and he creates this steamboat and he puts them together. And we all know the results of that. But yet, he found himself jobless. He found himself not knowing how to make ends meet, because that's what happens when you lose your job. That's the way it is. It goes together. You can't pay your bills if you don't have a job. And so he went through that. And then he created Walt Disney World. So I was looking up other famous people just for grins and giggles and found some really neat things. Like, I did not know that Steven Spielberg was rejected from film school. Really? I mean, now we're talking about the guy who brought us things like Jaws, E.T., Jurassic Park. Anyone? These little bitty films. But yet, he didn't just get rejected from film school once, 3 times. 3 times he was rejected from film school. Now, I don't know about you all, but I think that made me feel better about being always the one picked last for the team at school for dodgeball. Just saying. Because good gracious. I mean, that's the equivalent of Walt Disney getting fired from his first job. Here we have Steven Spielberg, who couldn't even get his foot in the door because he was rejected from film school 3 times. That's crazy. So, after he started his degree, he didn't give up. And really, he could have. He could have internalized that message of not being accepted into film school, and he could have given up. But he didn't. And you know what? He started his degree, and he went back to school and left, and went back to school and left. And so 35 years after he started his degree, 35 years, he returned to school and completed his work and earned his bachelor's degree. And I bet he didn't have any trouble getting accepted then. What do you all bet? I mean, it's Steven Spielberg. And so I read that on several different websites, and all you have to do is Google, people who overcame the odds, famous people who overcame failure, who overcame obstacles. And you can find a ton of stuff. A ton. So that's kind of recent history. And Steve Jobs said, if I try my best and fail, well, I've tried my best. And see, Steve Jobs, maybe you've heard of him, and his little fruit company called Apple Computer. Maybe. Well, Steve Jobs dropped out of college and quit his first job because he needed time to, quote, find himself. So then he had to leave the company that he started, and then he came back years later and made Apple Computer what it is today. How amazing is that? So here we are. We have 2 guys who are both left their jobs. Well, Walt Disney was fired, and Steve Jobs, of course, we just heard there. And then he was forced to leave the company he started. Those don't sound like successful people. Those sound like people who are heading nowhere on a fast track. I mean, being told that you have no creativity and all you want to do is doodle and draw this mouse in this steamboat. And then yet we have Walt Disney World. And then we have Steve Jobs forced out of his first company and not having direction, seemingly, and having to go find himself. And then we have Apple Computer. But how often do we look at kids who are going through the same thing, and they need some time to find themselves and discern who they are and what they want to do? And how often do we not encourage that? Or if we're the person, how often did we not get encouraged? Okay. But I want you to be encouraged today, because that's what we're looking at. And these folks certainly overcame, Who spends 35 years getting a bachelor's degree? Who would have given up long before then? But no. Steven Spielberg pushed through. So, okay. So those are all fairly recent. And I wanted to dig just a little further, in the past and see what other people might have overcome some obstacles. And you know what? 2 names popped into my head, and that's Mae West and Margaret Brown. Now, Mae West was quite the figure She was an actress, a singer. She wrote plays. She was a comedian. She was a sex symbol. She was just amazing, you know. And she had this kind of bawdy sense of humor, BAWDY. And it was a little on the risque side. So we have this woman who's from Brooklyn, okay? She's from Greenpoint, born in 1893. And during this time, women were not, they couldn't get jobs outside of the home. You know, a lot of places women couldn't even own property in their own name. But, you know, we have her and she wants to be a performer. And you know what? She was encouraged by her mother, who, according to Mae West later, she said that her mom always thought that anything that she did, she being Mae, was fantastic. But not everybody in her family was happy with her choice, including her grandparents and several other people. But she got her break and she took it, and her character with the Schubert brothers, she was opposite of Ed Wynn, and her character, Mamie, was a dancer. And she wound up having her photograph on sheet music. The song was drawing a blank here. Everybody Shimmies Now. So she took this pen name of Jane Mast, okay, and that got her around some obstacles there. And she wrote this play in 1926. Now, 1926, we're starting to get into the, oh my gosh, my phone's ringing. Oh well, voicemail. Now, in 1926, we're kind of going into the speakeasies and prohibition. So some people were starting to kick up the heels a little bit, but you also had this very conservative crowd. So in the middle of this was Mae West. And she wants to be an entertainer. And she had first entertained at a church circle and started doing some amateur shows when she was a kid and won prizes and talent contests and stuff. But she wants to go beyond that. So in 1926, she writes this play called Sex. 1926. This is the time when women are wearing swimsuits that go from here to their toes. I mean, think about this. How much sense does this make? She's writing this play called Sex. And she didn't just write it, okay? She wrote it, she produced it, she directed it. So it was all Mae West under the name of Jane Mast. So conservative people, they panned the show. They tried to get it discontinued before it even started, but yet people bought tickets anyway. But the problem was the city officials received so many complaints from people that the theater was raided. Can you imagine? You've written this play, you've produced it, you've directed it, and you're fighting opposition left and right, and then the theater gets raided by the police. And guess what happened? She went to the courthouse. And she was prosecuted on morals charges. So she got sentenced. She had to spend a week and a half in jail. Now, she could have paid a fine and been let off, but she chose jail, partially because of the publicity and partially out of, I think I read, protest for the treatment. I mean, oh my gosh. The whole idea that somebody would get thrown in jail over writing a play and being in it. So she got put in jail on Roosevelt Island, and it was a different time then. She actually wound up eating dinner with the warden and his wife. And if you have time, look it up, because the whole story of her going to jail is just amazing. But yet she didn't let it bother her that she had family that wasn't really happy with her. She didn't let it bother her that this was at a time when a lot of women couldn't own their own companies. To put it in comparison, women had just gotten the right to vote a few years before she wrote her play. And let me look up the exact date on that, because I don't want to mess it up. Let me type this in here. Women's suffrage. Okay, I'm just looking at it. Okay, on August 18, 1920, women got the right to vote. So in 1920, as women, we have advanced. We still sometimes can't have our bank accounts in our name, and we can't own property in our name. But finally, in 1920, we get the right to vote, and we can thank a group of people called Iron John Angels and suffragettes who went out there and had the foresight, even though they were being told no. They went out there and got the right to vote for women. And then only 5 years after that, being the time span that a group of kids might graduate from high school and go to college in today's world, 5 years after that, and boom, here's Mae West, and she's writing a play about sex. And she's thrown in jail for it. But yet, she could have stopped there. How many of us would have hung up our hat over having to go to jail because we wrote a play? How many of us would have said, I'm done, and walked? I might have been one of them. I might have just said the heck with it, because she had to overcome, and she was fighting. She had the support of her mother, but she did not have the support of some of her family members, including her grandmother and some other people who normally would be very important in your life. And she didn't have the support of the community. And she didn't have anybody in her life who could break through that and say, look, we're going to stand up for her and we're going to support her. It doesn't sound like, from what I've read, and if I'm wrong, somebody leave me a comment to correct me. But, here she went ahead and did it. And then you would think that as a playwright and putting all this together, that maybe she would be on a pinnacle. And just as that happens, she gets kicked into jail. Now, I cannot think of a more amazing thing to overcome, because that's a lot of obstacles. I mean, when you have your family against you and your society against you, and yet you want to go and you feel called to do something anyway. I mean, how do you overcome those odds? So, but she did. And, the world is totally different. But then she went on to do more things, and yet she kept getting censored. She did a radio show in the 30s with a ventriloquist, and she went on to do the show. She wanted to promote her latest movie. Every day's a holiday. And she appeared as herself in the movie, and she got censored. So, yeah. But nothing could completely hold her back. As we know, she went on to be very, very famous in movies and acting and radio. I just think she's a really cool gal. Personally, that's my thought. So let's hear it for coolness, right? So, and that just kind of amazed me. So I got to thinking, who else overcame adversity that back in the day that we might know about that might have become a household name? And so the next person that I had to look up, Margaret Brown. And Margaret was quite the character. Now, Molly Brown, as she is known today, posthumously, also known as the unsinkable Molly Brown. And if you've seen the movie Titanic, then you saw this character in the movie, Margaret Brown, Molly Brown, as she is now, who overcame the sinking of the Titanic. Her parents were Irish Catholic immigrants, okay, and they were here at a time when the Irish Catholic immigrants weren't hired. They had trouble getting jobs. They had trouble providing. There was a lot of prejudice against people who were immigrants. We still have some of that today. Now, I'm not going into politics there, okay? I'm just stating fact. But yet, we have this woman who came from that beginning. She was born in 1867, which is like 2 years after the Civil War. So the South is under reconstruction, and we're all kind of rebuilding. Still trying to figure out, what does the post-Civil War era look like? And boom. Entering the world is Margaret Brown, to poor immigrant parents. But yet she became a socialite. She became a philanthropist. She encouraged people in the lifeboat to go back to the debris and look for survivors in the sinking of the Titanic, when she herself and the people in the boat with her didn't even know if they were going to survive. They had no idea. They're floating in an ocean in winter, and it's cold, and they have just survived this huge disaster, and she's making them turn the boat around and go look for survivors. They didn't know if they were going to survive. And boom, here's this woman saying, we're going to do this. Come on. Number one, to go from immigrant parents who were very poor to being a socialite and being able to afford the ticket on the Titanic. I mean, really, that alone is an achievement. And then she made them turn the boat around, but it didn't stop there, because the women, the thing was at the time, women and children first. Women and children would be the first ones off the boats. Well, you know what? That's great in theory, but these women lost their husbands at a time when women weren't allowed to have a job except maybe be a seamstress or clean houses or do menial labor. Women weren't allowed to do that. So a lot of the women, from what I've read, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I put a lot of time into preparing for today because I felt like it was important for us to look at these folks' lives. and to learn from it what we can. But to get where she was and to get on the boat, but then her story didn't stop there, because with the women that were facing extreme poverty and hardship and would lose their homes, their houses, would struggle to provide for the kids. And we're talking about the workers, but some of the people who were on the upper echelon of the social structure still suffered, okay? It was all suffering. But she saw the plight of the workers. And before that ship docked in New York, she went around to the surviving people in her social circle, the philanthropists, the socialites, the people with means. And so before the ship docked, she had $10,000 that was raised to help the women and the children who lost their husbands and other family members potentially in the Titanic disaster. And this is at a time when, like I said, women weren't treated well. But yet she went on to do that. But her family had acquired wealth, went through some engineering efforts. So even back then in like 1893, they did a mine, her family did, and acquired some wealth. And she started helping in the soup kitchens to help miners and their families. So she had this passion, and here she had, and you can see the parallel. I mean, she had the passion to help people, and she had this really hard background. And she and her brother, to say more about her background, I read that she and her brother shared a 2-room log cabin, 2 rooms in a log cabin. So that's the kind of growing up she had. But yet that all prepared her to help others when she herself was in the middle of this disaster, So we don't know how our lives are going to turn out when we're in the middle of adversity or difficulty. So what I think our takeaway could be from that is that no matter how bad our lives are, it could put us in a position at some time to make a difference for others. And no matter how bad our lives are, it doesn't mean that life's going to stay bad. For her, life went on, and she was able to move forward and become the socialite. And, at one time she had a net worth. She went from poor immigrant parents to getting a net worth. Let me pull this up, because I don't want to get this wrong. $238,000. She had that net worth in 1922. This part is on Wikipedia. Poor immigrant parents and then moved from that to a net worth in 1922 of $238,000, which is the equivalent today. Well, 2019, this says, so that's close enough to today. Get a load of this equivalent. It's just under $3 million. Now, I don't know about y'all, but a net worth of $3 million sounds really pretty good to me. I think I could live off that. I think I could go back to the Dollar Tree and get me another couple of glasses for my iced tea. I might even buy you one too. If I had $3 million, a net worth of that, So, but you just never know. You just never know. So, I hope that this is going to help you all feel a little encouraged. It was encouraging to me to go through and do the research for the show. And, I hope that you can be encouraged too. When we go back and look through history, we're going back over 100 years ago for that. We had some pretty recent history. But there's another woman that I want to talk about. And I'm going to close with this because this lady is amazing. She's a little more recent. Most of us can relate to her on some different levels, and that would be Oprah Winfrey. Now, Oprah Winfrey was born into poverty. She had problems on the job, people. She had problems. She got into a position as news anchor, but yet she was told that she was too emotional to make it as a newscaster. So her boss took that position away from her and demoted her because she was too emotional for television, and she just wasn't right to be on TV. Yeah. Oprah Winfrey. Here she is. She's a black woman. She gets taken down a notch from her job. I mean, and it's kind of like Walt Disney to me. Walt Disney was fired for creativity issues, and here we have Oprah Winfrey getting fired because she didn't need to be on television. What were these bosses thinking? But yet, she turned that around. But see, Oprah's story started when she was born poor. And Oprah, I was just flabbergasted. Oprah was a woman who was abused as a kid. She gave birth at 14 to a baby that didn't live. I mean, the abused child, the baby at 14, the baby dying, extreme poverty, all of those are really bad things. How many of us would let any one of the things that happened to any of the people we've talked about, how many of us would let even one of those things impact us and keep us from achieving? And so then she finally gets to achieve, going back to Oprah here, she finally gets to achieve, she gets the job that she wants, she's living her life, and boom, she gets demoted because she can't be on TV. Now, unless you have been hiding under a rock and have never heard of Oprah Winfrey, I'm going to fill you in. She went on to create the Oprah Winfrey Network. She went on to have one of the highest ranking shows in American history and became one of the richest women in the U.S. and one of the most influential in the world. So go Oprah, right? It's crazy. So a lot of us who are dealing with difficulties and bad things, we have some crap going on in the world now. But I really, really hope that this show today will help you see that kind of no matter what your background is, because we have people from very diverse backgrounds that I've talked about today. No matter what your background is, there may be ways that you can overcome those problems. So if you don't have a job right now because you've been let go of a job, look around. These people were fired, they were demoted, they were pushed out of positions. They've had a company, it failed. Steve Jobs got pushed out of that company. These famous people had been there, just in the position that a lot of us have find ourselves in now. Oprah Winfrey was abused. She was told she wasn't fit for television. She went on to achieve. The unsinkable Molly Brown went on to achieve, overcome her difficulties. Mae West being thrown into jail for writing a play. I mean, really. And she didn't have support of all of her family, but each of these folks had support of one or two key people. And Steven Spielberg not being able to get into film school, really? Being told that you can't do this. You're not good enough to get into film school. But yet, they found ways to overcome. And see, the thing is, if they can find ways to overcome and be satisfied, we all are not going to be multi-billionaires, okay? But if we can find ways to overcome and learning from these people, we too can have satisfying lives that we can be happy with. And at the end of the day, that is what matters. That we have good lives that we can be happy with and that we can overcome these obstacles with and come out better. So that's what I hope happens for you today after hearing this and living through these times. So I want to thank you all so much for listening on the replay. Busy, I want to thank you for hanging out here in the chat room with us. And we've got another person that's watching, and I want to say thank you for that. And y'all go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already, and give me that like if you want to support me. I've got my Patreon and PayPal link below. I've got my social media links also down below. And please do share this with your friends so other people can get encouraged too. All right. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for joining me on Overcoming the Obstacles. And I will see you Sunday at 9 p.m. and Tuesday at noon right here. And those are Eastern times. Have a good week, folks.